Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Gazette-Mail candidate meeting with members of the Republican candidates for House of Delegates District 35. There are 4 seats in this district, and so electors will be choosing all 4 representatives. My name is Kelly Merritt. I am editorial page editor of the Daily Mail. So our format here, we will each introduce ourselves on the staff, and then starting with you, Mr. Grimm, correct? Yes, sir. And have each of you introduce yourselves in about a 1-minute explanation of why you're running. And then we'll just start asking questions. This is a discussion. It's not a debate. It's just a discussion. We want our readers to be able to, and the voters, to make their informed decisions about the election based on this. This is being live streamed and will stay on the website for people to look at later as well. So again, my name is Kelly Merritt. I'm Daily Mail opinion page editor.
I'm Whitney Burdett, an editorial writer for the Daily Mail page.
I'm Rand McElhenney. I'm co-editor of the Gazette-Mail, and among my duties is working with the Daily Mail.
My name is Sam Owens. I am one of the staff photographers.
I'm Rick Moore, I'm the city editor of the Gazette-Mail. I'm Rob Byers, I'm the co-editor of the Gazette-Mail.
I'm Dawn Miller, I'm the Gazette opinion page editor.
I'm Susan Shumay. I'm the publisher of the Charleston Gazette-Mail.
And Eric, I'm the State House reporter for the Gazette-Mail.
I'm Calvin Grimm. I graduated from Capitol High School in 2003. Shortly thereafter, joined the United States Air Force, did a tour in Iraq as an intelligence analyst. After I completed my enlistment, I was a defense contractor for 3 or 4 years, where we authored a lot of defense policy in the cyber and space worlds of U.S. Strategic Command. Then I moved back to the 35th District in West Virginia to finish my college education and started a film production company. We specialize in military documentaries about West Virginia veterans specifically. Inspired to run. Always had a sense to serve, and that's really why I'm here. I'd like to continue my service to the community in West Virginia.
My name is Moore Capito. I was raised here in the 35th District, in the same district that I seek to be a part of the House of Delegates. I'm a product of the West Virginia public school system here. And after graduation from high school, I went out of state for a few years. And then I met my wife and we moved back home to West Virginia. And we now make our home here in Charleston. We love it here, and we have in 2 weeks, she'll be 1 year old, a daughter. And she's changed the way that I view myself as a citizen and as a contributor to the community. And one of the biggest reasons that I'm running for the House of Delegates is to create a place that she will hopefully want to and have the opportunity to raise her family. Many of my classmates that I graduate with are no longer here, but that's not their choice. That's more a product of circumstance. And so I'm running to change that. Thank you for having me today.
My name is Matt Kelly. I'm from St. Albans, born and raised in St. Albans. Graduated high school there in 2000. Coached basketball in this area for the last 11 years, 6 years at St. Albans High School, 2 years at Riverside High School. The last 3 years at the University of Charleston. I'm currently employed. I love it here. I went to school here in West Virginia, at West Virginia State University. The reason I'm running is to get the oil and gas and coal fields going again, to find a way to get those going again. Create jobs, as everybody else is going to say, but we have to find a way to keep everybody here. And also to get our education system going. I think for certain we need to pay our teachers more to keep our quality teachers here from going to surrounding states and so forth, to better our students' educations as well.
Okay. My name is Keith Pauley. I want to thank you guys for hosting us today. We don't have a lot of opportunities to really talk about policy directly to the voters and directly to the people that are going to make the decision to vote for or against us. So I'm running in the 35th District, which, just so everybody knows, is South Hill, South Charleston, St. Albans, Nitro, and Dunbar. So I have to explain that all the time because the districts have kind of changed boundaries over time. I'm running because I'm not a politician. I'm not a typical kind of person to run for office. I'm an engineer. And Engineers fundamentally solve problems. That's what we do. And West Virginia has some very complex problems to be solved. We've generated problems over the last 8 decades. It's time to go solve those problems. You know, I worked for 17 years in various capacities for NASA. Was responsible for all the technology development for the space shuttle program. I am used to solving complex problems, and I'm not intimidated by the kind of problems that West Virginia has. I'm also a job creator. Lots of politicians over the last several decades have said we need to diversify our economy, we need to create jobs. But those politicians had no idea how to do it because they've never done it. Well, I started a little research and development company down in South Charleston called Matrix, which grew to one of the largest high-tech companies in all of West Virginia, employed over 150 scientists, engineers, and technicians, and it's still very vibrant in the technology park in South Charleston. So I know how to do that. I know what kind of regulatory and tax environment it takes for businesses to succeed in West Virginia. And I'm excited to take those technical challenges of fixing West Virginia's economy to the legislature. And I hope that you all would vote for me and everyone online would do the same.
My name is Bill Johnson. I was born and raised here in the 35th. I'm a product of South Charleston High School. I served in the United States Army. I worked with the Patriot Missile System. I came home after working corrections for a while. I learned by doing. I'm a hands-on guy. Don't have the broad college education, but I know how to get things done. I walk out on my front porch and I see for sale signs in my neighborhood. Every day when you open up the paper, you see more jobs leaving the area. We see scores down in our schools. I may not be your typical politician, but I do know how to talk to people. I do know how to listen, to take advice, take suggestions, and to apply those by asking for help with those who know more than I do on a subject. I appreciate you having me here today. And win, lose, or draw, I will be running again in 2018.
I'm Charlotte Lane. West Virginia needs leadership to fix our economy, to reform our educational system, to rebuild our roads and other infrastructure, and to solve our addiction and obesity problem. I am that leader that West Virginia needs, and I would appreciate your support.
Very good.
We talked about it already, but I should say for anyone watching that Eric Nelson was invited to this deal with budget session, so not here.
That's what I was just getting ready to say is the one candidate missing from the GOP field in this district is Eric Nelson, who is currently a member of the district in the House Finance Committee chair. And he is meeting with Governor Tomlin as we speak to talking about West Virginia state budget. So we may as well get started on that topic. Budget is a big issue, obviously, and the state doesn't have a budget. What do we need to do, starting with you, Mrs. Lane, to solve West Virginia's budget problems?
West Virginia is in a budget crisis right now, and the Senate took a realistic view of the budget, and the House presented some problems with coming up with solutions. I think that the House and the Senate needs to work together, and we have to be realistic that with the downturn in the economy, that only so much cutting can be done, and then we have to look for new revenue sources. And I am not adverse to increasing the tax on cigarettes. I would consider increasing the tax on alcohol. I think that we also have a severe road problem in West Virginia. And I looked at the Blue Ribbon Commission on roads and several of their recommendations I think the legislature needs to consider, and I would consider, for instance, raising the vehicle tax from 5% to 6%, In the past, it was always the same as the sales tax. And then when we raised the sales tax to 6%, the vehicle tax was not raised. I think we need to look at the Turnpike Commission to see what additional bonds could be sold. And right now, we also need to encourage our utilities in the state to do their infrastructure, and all of that creates jobs. Road building and fixing our infrastructure creates jobs, and that in turn will also help with our taxes, our revenue, and that's what we need to solve the budget problem. I would be very reluctant to look at the rainy day fund, and that would only be as a last resort. But I think that if we can get through this budget crisis, then when we elect a new governor, and hopefully that will be Bill Cole, Bill can look at the budget, and as he has said, not across the board cuts, but surgical cuts, and see where we can cut down on state government without hurting services.
It took us a long time to get into this situation. It's going to take more than 1 year, one session to get out of it. That's common sense. Anybody running a household, running a business knows this. We're going to have to open up our minds. We set this budget on projections based off of what we knew we used to get off of our severance taxes from fossil fuels, what we had coming in from the gambling industry. All of our competitors, the states around us, they're doing the same thing now. We've lost a big chunk of that. We're not going to be able to continue to rely on fossil fuels into the future. We're not going to be able to continue to rely on gambling. Everybody around us has that now. We need to open up our minds.
Our minds, not our minds, not our coal mines, but our brains.
Exactly.
Okay.
But we need to open our minds. We need to sit back and look at our infrastructure, not only our roads, our utilities. We need to develop our communications, our Wi-Fi communications, our networking in this state. If we're going to draw in large companies, large industry, we have to be able to provide the services that they're going to need to operate. We're going to need a workforce that's going to be trained up not only to say, look, we have the people, but we have the qualified people that you're going to need to open, operate, and maintain your operations into the future. We do this, we create our tax bases. I would love to see a tax implement. I'm so sorry, I'm tired. But I would love to see a policy come in where if we have a new business come in, we could offset part of the gross income tax based upon the number of people that they employ and their wages. The more people you employ and the more taxes that they are paying back into our society, why not allow that employer to show a little more off of their side? We're not going to be losing anything. It's going to balance itself out in the long run. But right now we don't have anything. There's going to be people saying, no, don't give these businesses any more tax breaks. Who are we not going to give a tax break to if nobody comes? I mean, it's common sense. You either take a piece of the pie or there's no pie to take a piece of. Over the long run, we're going to create more taxes this way. We're going to have to do just like any business, any household is going to have to. We need to clean house up a little bit so far as our bookkeeping, so far as our expenses. There are things that unfortunately we may have to cut, not alleviate. But some services may have to be reduced temporarily until we find ways to fund them. Raising taxes, nobody wants to. But if we are in a position where it's going to take a while to develop industry, we may need to raise some taxes or some service fees in order to compensate these losses that we've suffered. Neither of these are popular ideas. And depending upon who you're talking to, one's less popular than the other. But I'm going to go ahead and hand this over. I just don't see what the big issue is. I mean, I'm flabbergasted. I mean, it's a simple issue. Draw jobs, train people, pay taxes.
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a different take on this. I don't think West Virginia has a revenue problem. West Virginia has a spending problem. And I'll reference this report that the Cardinal Institute developed, which is called the Wild, Wasteful West Virginia Report, where the Cardinal Institute identified $330 million worth of wasteful spending in the state. Now, the problem we have with that is that the legislature really doesn't manage the state in a very detailed way. The legislature creates a budget which has a framework of spending for each agency. It's really up to the governor to implement those expenditures. So for instance, this legislative auditor identified between $50 and $70 million worth of wasteful spending in the Department of Highways. So the legislature really can't take that $50 to $70 million out of the Department of Highways budget because this governor has said, well, we just won't pave roads then. He's not saying that he'll go solve the problems identified in the audit. He's kind of holding the state hostage in terms of how that money gets spent. And that's completely inappropriate. So until we have a new governor who's willing to take a detailed look at how we spend money, the legislature really has their hands tied. But in the end, we don't really have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. So let me ask you a question. Which state has a bigger budget, California or West Virginia? Well, obviously California has a bigger budget because they have more people and they have a larger economy. And as West Virginia's economy shrinks and the number of people that live here shrink, we need to have government that's appropriately sized to meet the demands of our economy and our population. And we've got to go do that heavy lifting and reorganizing our government in a way that is appropriate there. So that's really the kind of things that I would do when I'm elected to the legislature, is really go in and assist the new governor of how to organize government in a way that is efficient and gives the most benefit to the people here in West Virginia.
My plan goes along the same lines as Keith's plan. You have to look at the state as a whole. I mean, you look at how many jobs we have per state. We have one of the biggest state governments in America, but we're not one of the largest states in America. So where can we make cuts? So you think about what can we do to bring business in? Can we give tax breaks to businesses? That's the easiest solution. I mean, if you bring more business in, you bring more employees in, those employees are spending money in the community, that the tax revenue is going up, and it starts to balance itself out a little bit. But where can we make cuts? If we all worked at businesses before, if it's not going so well, people lose jobs, people are laid off. Unfortunately, we have an unemployment problem in West Virginia. We have no businesses are moving into West Virginia. So what can we do to make it more business friendly to bring people in? I think that's the things we have to look at when it comes to it. When you talk about adding new taxes and stuff like that, a lot of times you're looking at just a Band-Aid on the problem. I mean, we have to be able to fix this before. We have to have a governor that's willing to work with it. It's not it's not like we're going to shut down the state government, take our basketball and go home because we're not getting what we want. We have to work together in unity to get this stuff solved, and that's what we need to do for that. It's not going to fix overnight. I mean, it's just not. We've had the last 83 years in a problem. We've done it the same way. Change is good. I know change. Nobody likes change. I mean, change is always met with resistance. But sometimes change is good, and we just have to take a step back and look at it and breathe and go with it for a while. And then if it doesn't work, you can always go back something. But sometimes you just have to have change to get good.
Yeah. So as we all know, I think that the budget situation that we face right now is it's pressing and it's very serious. And as I agree with what a lot of my colleagues have said today, that I don't think it's simple, and I think that it's going to take a multi-pronged approach, at least to get us through this year. And I think that we have to focus on getting ourselves through, and that's what as you alluded to, we have that's where Eric is right now, or Delegate Nelson, is trying to solve these issues with the governor right now. And it does, as Matt said, it takes compromise. So, for this year, I think the number one thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that we're cutting the fat out of government. Now, government exists to serve the people, and we need to make sure that the government that we have is appropriately sized to serve the people that we have. Secondly, anytime that a family is having a tough time in their household, sometimes that requires going into savings. Now, do I want to go into the rainy day fund? Absolutely not. But if it's necessary to modestly and very, 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 very small amount pull from there to get us back on track for 1 year, I think it might be a reasonable addition to one of the prongs of getting us on track with our budget for this year. And then, I don't think anything can be taken off the table. And so I think a modest increase on the tobacco tax is also reasonable. Again, it's impending and it's pressing. And I think that we need to have a sense of urgency about it. And that requires compromise, and that requires taking a look at all of the sides of the debate.
Yeah, one of the founding principles of the Republican Party is limited government. I think that's something that we really need to look at. There's over 150 state agencies and offices in the West Virginia state government, which is huge. And we need to look at opportunities to condense and consolidate these 150 plus agencies. How much real estate are they using? How many buildings are they covering? When you can start consolidating the nuts and bolts of these agencies, you can really look at ways to save money. The other thing is job creation goes hand in hand with our budget crisis. Personal income tax in West Virginia is second only to consumer sales tax and sources of revenue. The consumer sales tax would also, if that increases, the job increases, then you see more revenue there too. So they're not isolated issues. They're definitely hand in hand, to say the least. The severance tax is a huge thing. I believe someone mentioned earlier, but we can't look at what yesterday's severance tax revenue was. We need to look at what today's and tomorrow's and the day after that's going to be. And we can't have any fantasies of grandeur. The coal industry is declining no matter what we can do right here in West Virginia. And lastly, I know a lot of the sin taxes have been discussed, cigarettes, alcohol. I know in the GOP forum I get beat up about it, but we need to seriously look at the numbers coming out of Colorado and Washington on taxing cannabis. To me, it rolls right in there with alcohol and cigarettes as a sin tax, and we have no problem taxing gambling, alcohol, cigarettes. This is something that's a viable commodity that's out on our streets anyways, and I say that we take that money out of drug dealers' hands and put it into our state budget. It's not a matter of talking about legalizing cannabis anymore. We need to talk about taxing marijuana as a viable source of revenue. And at the end of the day, it's going to take compromise. Our Democratic colleagues are, they have a totally different plan on how to solve some of these issues. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a give and take. I'll more get that on the head. But if elected, I'd be happy. I'm open to working with Democrats on compromising on certain issues, but at the end of the day, we need to focus on unlimited government because that's the backbone of the Republican model.
Would anybody else be in favor of legalizing and taxing marijuana?
Concerning the marijuana issue, I have my stance against legalization and personal usage or recreational usage. I do not, however, have an issue with legalization for medicinal purposes. When you look at the VA, we have veterans coming out that are becoming addicted to opioids because they describe them to us like candy. If we can offset some of those prescriptions, either with and I'm not saying smoke a weed or smoke a joint, but using a pharmaceutical grade medical marijuana, whether it be an oil, a pill, whatever form they describe, not only to offset the opioid usage, but the other research has shown that it's been used for autism, for anger management. I'm looking at this because I have a daughter who is autistic. She is 6 years old. I'm not excited about the possibility of doing that. She has managed herself well. But when you go online and you watch videos of what some of these parents are dealing with, you see where it could be an option to not only reduce the stress in that family, but to give that child the opportunity to be a progressive member of society when they get older. The earlier intervention that we have, the better. there's no cure, there's no end all for it, but they can learn to manage. But medicinal marijuana, I got off track a little bit there, I would back. Legalization for recreational use, I have issues with.
In 1979, when I was in the legislature, back when I was young and had dark hair, we passed the use of medical marijuana, and it passed the Senate. And it was a pilot program, I think. And I don't think anything was ever done. And then in 1996, I believe, the legislature took it off the books, or Department of Health and Human Services took it off the books. I never understood why the state didn't actually go forward with the program, but I support the use of medical marijuana, but not the legalization for other uses.
I believe that this whole discussion about legalizing marijuana is kind of a red herring. The polls say that West Virginia opposes legalizing marijuana almost 80%. We're the very last state in terms of ranking on most likely to legalize marijuana. Whether it's a good idea or not, the people behind the white picket fences don't want us to do it. And you know, I think enough said. If I wanted to do it, I couldn't, because the people don't want me to do it. So to that degree, I'm just not sure I support it.
Even medical marijuana?
Medical marijuana is kind of a different thing. If it's in a pill form or other non-recreational format, you know, I think that those are appropriate if the FDA is involved and those kind of things.
All I'll say is $100 million goes a long way towards a $400 million budget deficit. And based on West Virginia's size, Colorado makes a lot more than that, but based on our size as a smaller population, I've got a lot of economic studies on it. If we did it the way Colorado did it, just tit for tat, that would not be smart. There's ways to improve on that. There's public safety concerns that can be improved on that Colorado didn't address when they did it. And I'm not saying we just copy what they do. I'm saying we look at what they do and look at the opportunity as a source of revenue. And to debate the medical benefits of it is just absurd, because if you don't agree with the medical benefits of it, then you haven't read anything on it in the last 15 or 20 years. But it's a revenue source. It's out there, and I think it's an opportunity we should seize.
You want me to go? I don't think that that legalization of marijuana is the solution to our budget problem.
Yeah, it's just a Band-Aid for the problem. I don't feel like that's going to be a sustainable income for years to come. I think if you want to look at it medically, I'm not a doctor, so I can't make that decision. I met with the Charleston Police Department last week, and they gave me some pretty good info that's a gateway thing to other things. So until then, I still support my blue team.
Each one of you talked about something that you would cut that you didn't mean anything. What is just a specific program that you would want to cut?
I'll go first. I think you have to look at the transportation. I mean, if we have like so many fleet vehicles here, and we're still as a state looking at other avenues, I mean, we either need to go fleet vehicles, or we need to go, use a rental car company, or we need to, or do something else. I think that's one big thing. As talking with an auditor candidate, that's one big issue that we have is with transportation. Is where can we fit this line? Are we going to do both? Are we going to do one? Are we going to do mileage reimbursement? And you got the DHHR. We're reimbursing so much miles per year. Can we solve some budget issues there by getting some fleet cars there? Then it comes down to it. If we get some fleet cars that are powered by natural gas, I mean, then the gas industry is going more and stuff like that. And then we're drilling more and we're getting there. And I think that's a good solution to start with.
I mean, go ahead, Keith. You
Susan,
got a whole lot.
I think you've got a great question, and I think there's 50 programs in this report that need to be looked at.
What's one specific program that you would champion cutting? Is what I'm asking.
Well, I think I would champion cutting 50, not just one. Well, one of them is the one I already referenced. There's $50 to $70 million worth of wasteful spending in the Department of Highways. There's a whole section about fleet vehicles that Matt talked about. These things all aggregate into real money. Some of them are small amounts of money. Some of them are larger, like the Department of Highways money, but they all aggregate into real money. And we have to go look at all of them. And, a lot of candidates say, let's cut wasteful spending. Hey, I've got a blueprint here that says exactly where to look. And I think that's pretty credible.
Do you agree with everything based on that?
Not everything, obviously. But we need to look at all those, and there's probably another 50 to 100 that aren't even in this book. Most of these are just referenced from articles in your guys' newspapers that you guys have already written about, or from legislative audits or those kind of things. So, let's get a real audit in here. Let's get a real big three audit firm and go through all of our state agencies and figure out exactly where we need to cut, and do that in a very systematic way so we have the most efficient government we possibly can.
Keith, just a point of clarification, don't you work for the Cardinal Institute?
I'm the chairman of the board of the Cardinal Institute.
I would say, I agree with what they're saying. I mean, I just went through this at a company that I work. I mean, fleet vehicles is huge. It might be one of those things, that's an easy thing to, pick off. But I mean, it's so true. I mean, you look at assets on the books that aren't being used. I mean, they just, it's just a bad cost, and it just drives down efficiency. And so I would certainly look at, all of those state vehicles that we have. I mean, is it better? Is mileage reimbursement better? Rent-a cars. I mean, that's like I said, there's probably a lot in there, but I mean, that was actually the first one that came to mind for me. So
I was stationed in California when we called him Uncle Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor. He had a great plan when they had a budget crisis, and the Democrats beat him up so bad. And these are California Democrats too. So he said he wanted to cut every state program by 10%. And Governor Tomlin actually had a similar proposal to that. I think his number was 4%. And I think the key is consolidation and efficiency, not eliminating any certain agencies. I don't think there's one agency in West Virginia that we wouldn't suffer if it just went away. I think the name of the game is efficiency, and don't be controlled by special interest and cut this area and leave something else completely untouched. I think I don't want to see one agency just go away. I think it's a matter of telling each one of them to count their pennies better.
One of our most serious problems is our educational system. And I went back and read the educational audit of 2012, which we paid a lot of money for, and it was a very good report, and it identified a lot of issues that the State Department of Education is top heavy, and I think that we should seriously look at that report and implement a lot of the recommendations. I also think that part of our problem with education is that the legislature tries to micromanage education. I am in favor of letting the state superintendent and the State Board of Education manage our educational system. So that means that I would eliminate the governor's department on education and the arts. I haven't quite figured out what that department does that isn't covered by the mandate of the state superintendent and the Board of Education. The report said that the governor needed to be involved in the educational process, and that's why I had the State Department of Education and the Arts. Well, it seems to me that since the governor appoints the Board of Education, that is enough involvement, and we ought to leave it to the state superintendent that is the expert on this. And if we don't like what the superintendent does, then we bring pressure to get a new superintendent. But the legislature ought to get away from deciding how many pencils the school board is local school boards are allowed to buy.
So far as one item goes, we're all in agreement that we do have to make cuts in government based upon our population. But one subject that I've been looking at, I used to work as a case manager at the Federal Work Police Center. It was a community-based program. And honestly, I believe that our Department of Corrections could definitely use some cuts, and we could definitely use some of these people back in their workforces. I would advocate for more community-based corrections that would not only allow for these people to be supervised, not only allow for them to go back to work, continue to earn for themselves or to earn a job skill. But the program that I worked in, they even had to pay a subsidy where they reimbursed the state a percentage of their cost for incarceration. It's a win-win-win. They're not behind the wall. They're still receiving therapy or rehabilitation that they need. We keep people in the workforce, increasing our tax base, and we decrease the cost of incarceration. The cost of our facilities that we have in the state right now are astounding. The single cost that I saw that really drew my attention was not only the $8+ million that we pay for personnel to work in these facilities, we also spent an additional $8+ million providing health care for these inmates. We are giving 3 hots and a cot to people that we are incarcerating when outside of Kanawha County, we have kids in schools that are paying for their meals. Let's put some of the burden back on them. We're not babysitting. They're not in school. Let them contribute to society while they're paying their penance.
Does everybody answer the cat's question? I think so. Ms. Lane, I'll direct this question to you, and then anybody jump in after she answers. So, you, of everyone sitting here, I believe, are the only one who has served in this body in the West Virginia House of Delegates.
Yes, and I might add that I served when Republicans were in a minority, and I'm very excited about perhaps serving again and being in the majority so that somebody maybe will listen to my ideas.
What was your first term?
1979-80, and then I was elected in 1984, but I resigned when I was appointed to the Public Service Commission, and then I was elected in 1990.
Okay. Well, the point I want to get at is we see a lot of first-time candidates here, and who've never served, and they have a lot of ideas. They're going to do this, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, and I kind of think back, yeah, it's a good idea, but good luck with reality once you get in. I want you to tell us about the learning curve, what you've learned that make you a better legislator if you're elected this time. And then based on her answer, the rest of y'all just jump in after she's through, what you know, what you bring to the table as someone who's never served in that body, that maybe you'd be a little ahead of the learning curve than others might be. That makes sense.
Well, first of all, you have to have patience because nothing happens overnight. And you can't get frustrated if you can't make change happen instantaneously. So you have to work hard and you have to build relationships with other people in the House, both Republican and Democrat, discuss ideas and work with them to get support for your ideas. And the committee process itself is very important. And working hard and being prepared when the committee meets and knowing what are in the bills and being prepared to make amendments to make the bills better is very important. By the time a bill gets to the House floor, it's almost too late to fix it or kill it. So all of the hard work basically is done in the committees. And that's what I have learned. And in relationships, and even though there may be people that you disagree with their ideas, generally because all people who run for the House of Delegates and the Senate are public servants and they want what's best for West Virginia. And so if you meet with them and talk with them, you will find common areas, even though on a lot of areas you might not agree with them, but you'll find those common areas, and then you can work with them and get bills passed.
Like I said in the opening statement, I'm a hands-on learner. I don't have the answers to a lot of the problems that we have in the state. I don't have them written down in front of me. I don't have them in my head. But I am willing to talk to listen to take suggestions, take ideas from whoever is willing to offer them, to have them looked at, to represent them to the right people who would have that information to check into it, and then try to work with people to formulate a bill from there. I will listen. That's one thing that I think that some people have forgotten how to do once they got into office.
Well, I'm 50 years old, and I've worked in the private sector virtually my entire career, and led my own companies, worked with customers all over the world, lived in China for a number of months. I really know how to build relationships, even across significant differences. I know how to build teams. I've been very successful doing those things. And it is about compromise. It is about learning what's important to other people. I've also been a student of the West Virginia legislature and what the priorities of the legislative leaders are, what some of the issues are that have to be solved. And I've spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours up at the Capitol, observing committee meetings, sitting in on floor sessions, just to understand exactly how that process works. Because I don't want to just get elected and do on-the-job training. I wanted to be the best legislator from the first day that I arrived. And I've invested my time and my effort well in advance of even the election so that I can serve very well when I get there. And I think that that's important, and somebody needs to make those investments to be qualified to run.
I think it's to go into it and say that we'll take over from day one, and it's not going to happen, but it's going to be a give and take relationship. We have to build a good rapport with everybody that's been in there for a while, and they come in there and even a give and take with the Democrats. I mean, we have to work together to fix West Virginia. You can't just divide the House and say this is what's going to happen. I think it's what we're seeing now with the budget crisis, and I think that's the biggest thing here is we need to work together. One thing my pastor always says at church is, you got to have unity. If you take unity and you take the un off of it, you misspell it. I mean, it's untie, and you don't want to untie West Virginia. We want West Virginia to be tied together. And I've never left West Virginia. I grew up here. I was, raised in the schools here. One of the greatest things is my grandfather moved here from Kentucky back in the day when there was no jobs and created a business here, and created a family here. And thankfully, I'm here now. And I get married this summer to the love of my life. I can't wait. I'm really excited. I mean, I mention it every time I go somewhere because she's awesome. She's way too beautiful for me, but I'm like, I want to stay here with her. I want to create a family here with her. And I don't want us to have to look for something. So if it means working with somebody and have a give take, I mean, it is what it is. If they have an idea that's best for West Virginia, that's what needs to be put forward. It's not just what I want, but what's best for West Virginia is what's I'm going to put forward.
Yeah, I think some of them hit on. I mean, consensus is important. I mean, I've worked in every area that I've been in through school and growing up here in the Kanawha Valley and high school. I've always liked to think that I'm a pretty good leader, and that's because I think I can bring people together. I can build relationships. I can communicate with people. I'm growing my family here right now. I mean, I'm in the first inning, so I've got a little ways to go, but you feel and you see the struggles that a lot of people in the same position are having. And I've always considered myself a good advocate for those that I represent. And so, I mean, I think that I would be a good representative for those in the Kanawha Valley because I'm early in my career, I'm early in my familyhood, and I think that's what people cherish most. They want a good place to be able to raise their family. As far as procedure, so I guess that's more direct to your question. I've always considered myself a fast learner. I mean, really, I think what we need is, you know, a fast learner that's got enthusiasm, that wants to get in there and make a difference. I'm that person.
Yeah, when I worked as a defense consultant, I just finished 4 years active duty, including a rough 8 months in Iraq, and I was hired to Booz Allen Hamilton. They were made famous by the leaker guy, Edward Snowden, who I don't know, never worked with him. But our company, Booz Allen Hamilton, was the people the government called when they couldn't figure out the problems. And that's what I was trained to do, is to fix problems. When I moved back to West Virginia after my military service and serving for just a little bit on it was about 3.5 years as a defense consultant. And I came back here, and I could only watch a train wreck so long before wanting to help. My sense of service, just like when I graduated high school, and I turned down acceptances to both WVU and Marshall so I could join and get in the fight while everyone else was going off and partying and going to school and all that. I was like, no, I want to help my country. I'm a patriot. I want to help, and that's really why I'm here today. Is the training I had as a defense consultant. We authored policy and helped revise policy within the Department of Defense that revolutionized how we fought cyber warfare and the real Star Wars. I worked with Air Force Space Command, and we revolutionized how we conduct military operations online and in outer space. And we have a problem here in West Virginia that there's solutions to those problems. And that's really what my background is like I said, we were the Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call when there's a problem? And that's what Booz Allen taught me how to do.
I'd like to hear from each of you what you would like to see out of the legislature as far as education. You can talk about the role of the legislature, what specifics that you want in education, just whatever's on your mind regarding education. You don't have to go in circle order. Who would like to go first this time?
Two numbers that are really bad. About 10 years ago, we spent 24% of our state budget on public education. Now that number is like 10%. That's got to fit. We got to spend, whatever our budget is, we need to focus on education more now. It's god awful that, almost a quarter of our budget used to go to public education, and now it's below 10%.
I think 52% goes to well, and then another portion goes to higher ed.
I might have to look at the graph again, but it's dropped significantly. It's dropped to just astronomical amount in the last several years.
Higher ed.
Yeah. Are you just talking about higher ed?
They're both issues. I mean, especially WVU also has a huge amount of money. It's like just under $1 billion of our budget goes to WVU. And you look at our smaller schools, I always support my Yellow Jackets, West Virginia State University. And I think that's a little disproportionate.
I'll go next. I think there are some numbers that are really critical. We spend about $183,000 per classroom on K-12 education in West Virginia, yet we only pay our teachers $42,000. So where does that other $140,000 go? That is the wedge of money that we can use in our classrooms to improve education in West Virginia. And we really need to target that. That's really critical. The second thing is we have a school funding formula that was based out of Supreme Court decisions in the 1970s. That funding formula does not work these days. And we have to go back and revise that funding formula so that our individual students can have the funds they need to be successful in the classroom. And that 40 to 50-year-old funding formula that the Supreme Court dictated, not the legislature, the Supreme Court dictated, is really a fundamental problem of why we have the education system we have today.
Okay, you hit on my favorite subject. So,
Okay.
Promise the rest of you get to answer this question. Just a quick follow-up. Could you describe to me what you would like to see instead of the state school funding?
Well, the school funding formula funds county education, county-based education. I think the money needs to follow the student, not the counties. It just seems to be a completely inappropriate way to make sure that every student has the same amount of resources, whether they're in McDowell County or Doddridge County or Kanawha County.
But it's based on student population. It's based
It is, but it's also based on a number of administrative staff. It's based on bus travel miles. There's 41 different elements of the formula. It's very complex, and it just seems to be inappropriate. The bottom 9 population counties all reference off of Pocahontas County. And last year, Pocahontas County gained a few students, so the other 8 counties lost funding from the state. Now, does that make sense? I mean, those kind of things.
What you would like to see in terms of.
Well, I think a direct correlation between funds and students.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you restate your question?
Sure, I was just asking what you would like to see out of the legislature regarding education. Any topic you like, what's the legislature's role, which I think you already touched on, but anything you'd like to pursue regarding education?
Yes, one of the other reports that I read getting ready to come here today was called Imagine West Virginia, and it was a report put out several years ago by Jack Bowman and his committee, talking about what we can do to make education better in West Virginia. And one of the main recommendations was that we empower principals of each school to be in charge of the instructional aspect in the school and hold the principals accountable. And that means relieving them of operating the building and, spending their time making sure that the heaters work and the schools are clean, etc. Let somebody else do that, but the principals be in charge of the instruction and work with the kids and the teachers to make sure that school performs. And I think that is a very good idea that should be looked at.
Sure. I would like to see more of the decision-making for our, for educational institutions made on a localized approach. I mean, I think our communities and our volunteers and our teachers that are local have a pretty good say of what the landscape is. I also really think what's important is that we advocate on behalf of not only our 4-year higher education institutions, but I think that we really need to demonstrate to our students out there that there are other options, that we have community colleges and vocational trainings, because I think, again, one of my biggest reasons for running is so that we can not only retain, but attract businesses and jobs. And so I think one of the biggest parts of that is an educated workforce. And so the more diversity we have in that education, I think the better.
Sure. It seems like the state and the legislature has been trying to do that for several years. They've certainly made community college education more of a priority. We're out there, they've severed it from 4-year schools. So is there something specific that's not being done that you'd like to see done?
I mean, there's nothing, I think we just need to keep pushing it. I mean, and I think it goes down to the local level. I mean, it goes to informing students, or perhaps it's how we're informing students of the possibilities that are out there. I mean, there are too many folks that are coming out of college with mounds of debt and nowhere to turn. So, I mean, again, I think it's being more informative. How are we informing? What's the method? What's the medium?
Although, I think one of the biggest thing is you have to pay teachers more. I mean, we have to have quality salaries for quality teachers. But that's going to keep teachers here from going to other states there. I mean, we're ranked 47th in teacher salary when they can go right across the rivers and make more money in all these different states, like right below us. If somebody's graduating from WVU and instead of moving back to Charleston, they're moving to Baltimore, Maryland, making a lot more money than what they're making here. It just makes more sense. I mean, they're not coming back here. So what can we do to keep those quality teachers and those quality people here to create more families? So that's one thing. I think one thing like more of us talked about, it's like Ridge Valley has a great program right now. They partner with Toyota, where the kids go to school there, and then they have a job already lined up at Toyota. So how can we better partner with some more of the companies here in West Virginia? Like, for instance, Procter & Gamble's opening up in Martinsburg. Can we partner with something with that? Can can we do something? Can we bridge the gap just a little bit more and use our vocational and technical schools? I think we can. I think that's all stuff we can do. And then we have to look at some of the superintendents. We're giving superintendents raises, although student population and student enrollment keeps declining. I think that's something we need to look at heavily. If we're looking at that, we're going to keep paying somebody when they're losing students in that thing. Can we maybe go to, like Eric Nelson, Delegate Nelson had a great plan by bringing them into, I forget how he called it, almost like a circuit, I guess. Like not just having a Kanawha County have a superintendent and everything, but even bringing several counties together and having a regionalized system. That's another thing to look at. What Eric said with that was brilliant. I thought it would have helped the budget a lot. It would help several situations a lot. We could have went from there. It was about programs that we have. Has Common Core been given enough time? I don't know. I see things on Facebook all the time, like the first car created with Common Core and all this stuff. That stuff's pretty funny. But have we given Common Core enough time to see if it is successful or not? Probably not. So we probably need to wait a little bit longer and see how it does compared to what we used to do. There's just different things that we need to do. Technology, where are we at with our technology? Several of the school systems can't get Wi-Fi or internet where they're at. So we have to be able to help that out. So I think those are all options we can look at.
So as far as a legislative role with education, I would definitely like to see less. I'd like to see less legislative influence, less state influence. Workers will put back into the counties, back into the communities. Cut out some of that red tape and expense overhead, put that money back into the classroom so we don't have our teachers going out spending money out of their pocket, hitting up the parents every week to get supplies into their classrooms. That being said, that also would affect the zip code lottery. Each school, the services provided within those schools is based upon not only the number of students in those schools, the population surrounding the school, but the the average income surrounding those schools. Title IX reading programs are wonderful. Why should only a few schools have those? That we have one at Richmond Elementary School. That's where my children attend. We have services available from school to school, just in this county alone, that are not copied in other schools. And there's a need for them across the board. Let's cut out some of this spending up top here and put it back down in the classrooms. And maybe where we are now ranked number 11 in the country in per child spending on education and finishing in the bottom 5, we can see a little more return on our investment. Our children will be able to come out and produce better than we did.
I have a question that's not exactly about your race, but you're Republicans, right? We had a story in the paper yesterday about the Republican ballot, and people may think they're voting for a presidential candidate, but it looks to me like your vote for the delegates is more important than who you say should be president. Do you think people are aware of what they're going to be voting, the methodology for voting, and does the system make sense? And not everybody has to answer, but if you have an opinion.
Well, first of all, I'm running for delegate to the National Convention from the 2nd Congressional District.
How many things are you running for?
Well,
She can get in.
I just like public service. And I do not think that people are aware that even though we're voting for the president, whoever we want to vote, when we get to the convention, it's whoever the delegates are that have been elected and who they have committed to. Or if they haven't committed, then they can decide at that point. But no, I don't think people understand that it's the delegates who will, whoever they're supporting will be the one to choose the nominee.
Are you a committed delegate?
What?
Are you a committed delegate?
Yes, I am committed to Jeb Bush. You see how.
You're not a committed delegate.
So I don't, even though I've been elected several times in the past, I'm not expecting to be elected this time.
You were raising your hand.
Well, what it all boils down to, that race, as in any other race, and there's a lot more candidates in that one, comes down to voter education. You have to take the time to read the paper, go online, hit the sites, find out who these candidates are supporting. Then if they don't support who you're pulling for, vote for somebody else. Again, it's simple.
The scary part about that whole ballot, I'm sure you guys have all looked at the sample ballot, is you vote for these 240 delegates to the convention before you vote for the Supreme Court, which is arguably one of the most critical elections in this primary cycle. So our ballot design is also a really critical, crazy thing. So this system with all these delegates and voting for president is just, it needs to be looked at for 4 years from now, because it's just insane.
Thank you guys for producing that article, because people need to be educated really on the process, because it's convoluted. And the thing is you might have a delegate that you vote for because you think they're, I mean, if you're committed, but even that is not really defined until, you know, it actually comes down to the convention. So it's a real funny system. I don't like it, but it is what it is. And I appreciate you guys putting out the word out from the media side to let people know, you know, it doesn't really matter, you know, who you put on your ticket in November. This election in May is important as well with the delegate selection.
We've gone through our hour. Unless you want to talk about, anybody else want to talk about the delegates? We've gone through our hour that we've allotted. I'd like to end it with one question. It's a real quick answer for each person. That's actually one of my favorite questions I always ask, or I used to always ask, yet this year. I believe, well, this district now has 4 representatives. Or a dozen, or 10 years ago, I think they had 7 representatives, 7 delegates. And I believe when you served the first time, there was 12 delegates.
Yes.
And so the simple question is, how many delegate districts should there be in West Virginia?
We should have single member districts throughout the whole state.
Agree, single, one per district.
55 total, yeah.
I would have to look more into it. I don't have a strong opinion on that.
How, you know, I'm going for one of the spots, whether there's 12 or 4, so.
I've never really honestly put much thought into that. I know that they just recently rezoned everything, redistricted everything. Hopefully it'll work out fair. Let's work with what we got for now and focus on more important issues.
That concludes our interview. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
For your